Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to cross the Øresund once again, and we're going to go back to Denmark and revisit a brewery that's featured on the channel a good few times before. I've had some really nice beers from these guys over the years, a few different styles, and I think it's fair to say that this brewery are, generally speaking, a very solid all-round brewery, and they're not famous for any particular style, but it is definitely worth trying their beers if you get the chance. It's been about 2 years or so since I last reviewed a beer from them, which I couldn't believe when I was looking up on the channel. But yeah, nice to finally get around to reviewing something else from these guys after such a long time. Now, the one that we're going to have a look at today is a style that I haven't had from them before, so I have to say I'm very curious to see what this one has in store for us. So hopefully it's another good beer, hopefully it makes for an interesting review, and as always I hope that you guys enjoy my take on this beer as well. So yeah, for this review then, we are going to head to a little place called Ebeltoft, which is near Randers and Aarhus in the middle part of Øland, the mainland part of Denmark, and we're going to have a look at another beer then from Ebeltoft GårdBryggeri, or the Ebeltoft Farm Brewery if you want to translate it into English. But this particular beer is simply called Imperial Stout. It comes in at 9.3% ABV, and I think you know what style this one is. But yeah, I bought this beer at Kiosk over in Copenhagen when I was there a couple of days ago, and yeah, I bought it, one, because I hadn't had anything from Ebeltoft in quite a long time, and two, it's a style that I haven't tried from them before, and their beers always tend to be pretty damn solid actually. So let's see how we get on with this one then. As I say, nice to return to these guys after what feels like quite a long time, nearly 2 years apparently. So yeah, as always with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Ebeltoft GårdBryggeri before, and hopefully we can add some more to that list at some point in the near future. I don't intend on leaving it 2 years before I review another one of their beers, but we'll see what they have the next time I'm over in Denmark. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel, of course, has a geography-based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, province, prefecture, whatever it is you happen to be interested in. Do check out the playlists of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the Danish beers that I've reviewed for you, and that's being added to very regularly, of course, because I live in southern Sweden and I go over to Copenhagen quite often, so it's many good Danish beers to be had over there. But as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, on to my brewery notes then, to tell you a little bit about Ebeltoft GårdBryggeri then. So Ebeltoft GårdBryggeri, as I've mentioned to you already, is based on a farm in Ebeltoft on the Øresund Peninsula near Randers and Aarhus in the middle part of Øland, also known as Midtjylland, which is the mainland part of Denmark that's attached to Germany. But the owner of this brewery is Peder Zacho Hansen, who was originally a mechanical engineer, but he later decided to get into brewing, and he's a self-taught brewer as well. But as the name suggests, as we've mentioned a few times, the brewery is located in an old farm complex, and it's been converted, and it can be found on the edge of the Mols Bjerge National Park, which is supposed to be a very nice little part of Denmark actually. I do need to get over to Denmark and explore both Fyn and Øland a little bit more, because I've only really seen Sjælland actually. But the company was founded back in 2008, and over the last couple of years they have continually expanded. But in addition to beer, they also produce cider, bottled water, and Peder's brother Christian is also involved in the company importing different coffee beans from across the world. But the brewery also has a small cafe on site where you can drink the beers and enjoy views of the Kattegat, which is the sea between Denmark and the southwestern coast of Sweden, made famous of course by the Vikings TV series. But as of January 2022, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced around 225 different kinds of beer according to Untappd, and the current head brewer is Ben Howe, who is from New England over in the US. He's got quite an extensive experience over there, from what I understand. But yeah, that is all I can really tell you about Ebeltoft GårdBryggeri for the moment. If you want to learn a little bit more about these guys, you can of course check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn a little bit more about all the different beers that these guys have done. But yeah, very brief history with this one. These guys are quite easy to sum up in that sense. But like I said to you earlier, they're not famous for any one particular style of beer, but one of the more well-known beers from these guys is called Raw Power, which is a Citra New England IPA, and I would recommend that you try that. But the last beers I reviewed from them, I believe, were the Helles and the Doppelbock, so their German style beers are also pretty solid in my opinion, and very authentic actually. But yeah, check out some of the beers if you do get the chance. But yeah, let's crack on and have a little look at this one then and see how we go. So as you can see, the artwork on this one hasn't changed in the years that we've been reviewing the Ebeltoft beers. There you can see the sort of old Viking runic type symbol there, I guess we could say, really medieval looking. That is also on the bottle cap of this one, if the camera will focus. Let me just see. There you go. Looks very nice. But yeah, very straight up label. This one, 330 millilitres. And I think this beer was actually remarkably cheap when I got it. I'm sure I only paid about 45 Danish kroner for this one. So that's roughly about 60 Swedish, which is about €6. And I guess somewhere in the region of like £5 sterling. So for those of you watching in the States, it's about $7. So yeah, for a big 9.3% Imperial Stout, not too bad actually, not too bad. Danish beer of course is a little bit more expensive because the currency is so strong, labour costs over there and wages are very high, but that's typical of the Nordic countries, to be honest with you. So yeah, wages are, you know, if you're earning and working over here as I am, you know, it doesn't make that much of a difference, but as a tourist it would be quite expensive of course. But yeah, it says this one is best before September of 2023, but it doesn't list, pardon me, a bottling date on it. But regardless, yeah, 9.3% Imperial Stout, this one. It should be pretty nice actually. So let's get this guy out and we'll get on with the tasting then. Very curious to see what this has in store for us. And I think this, other than the Doppelbock, this might well be the very first dark beer that I've had from Ebeltoft GårdBryggeri. But of course the Doppelbock is more of a kind of brown sugary beer rather than a big dark black malty thing as you'll get from an Imperial Stout. But yeah, this will be quite an interesting experience, and that was the main reason that I bought this one, was because I hadn't seen this style from Ebeltoft GårdBryggeri before. So we'll need to see exactly how it turns out, what kind of Imperial Stout this one is going to be. So anyway, we've got the beer out and into the glass now. As you can see, and as you would expect, it's poured a lovely, very dark, ebony rosewood colour. The head on this beer, as you can see, is about a quarter finger. A frothy, I would say, kind of light fawn coloured head. It is just fading away to be a very thin foamy layer in the middle of the glass, but round the edge of the glass, it's got a nice kind of thicker foamy ring. But there's one or two big bubbles sticking towards the side of the glass, a few little ones going up toward the bottom of the head there. But I mean, overall, it does look pretty nice actually. But yeah, when we shine the light through this one, it is definitely a big dark ebony rosewood colour. Remember, the colour of your beer depends on 1, the type of malts that you use. That goes a long way to determining your EBC rating. 2, the length of your wort boil is also going to play a role, because the longer you boil the wort, the more the sugars caramelise, and thus you get a darker colour of beer. When it comes to Imperial Stouts, they do tend to sometimes give these beers a longer wort boil. In this case, I'm not 100% sure, but yeah, it's not unheard of to give Imperial Stouts a longer wort boil. But yeah, this should look pretty nice. But yeah, in terms of this as well, you've also got to consider any adjuncts that are put into the beer and any barrel aging that they do. That can affect the colour, but when it comes to Imperial Stouts, there's very few adjuncts that can really make that big of an impact on the colour of the beer itself. But yeah, as we say, a nice looking beer, this one, kind of exactly as you would expect for an Imperial Stout, to be honest with you, in terms of appearance. So nothing really surprising about this beer when we think about the style and what kind of beer it is. So yeah, let's take a little look at the aroma of this one then and see how we get on. I don't think there's anything else we really need to say about the appearance of this one. So aroma time then, let's look at this. Oh, that does smell pretty nice actually. I'm going to say straight away, this one is a really old school Imperial Stout, but it's actually very nicely balanced. Yeah. So as I said earlier, you do get a few different kinds of Imperial Stouts. You will get, a Russian Imperial Stout, which tends to be a really roasty, toasty sort of thing. You'll get an Imperial Milk Stout as well, which tends to be quite sweet. You can get chocolate stouts and so on. But this one for me is quite interesting. It has a few different traits about it. My first impression of this beer is that it's got a really nice balance between the roasty, toasty side of things and the sweeter side of the beer. So I really like how this one goes about its business from that perspective. This is a really, really nice smelling old school Imperial Stout, this one. And I, to be honest, I kind of expected this one. It is simply just called Imperial Stout. You expect that. And, Ebeltoft GårdBryggeri, they have had a sort of, I guess that's what they've been doing in recent times. They've been releasing, old school styles of beer and just doing really nice takes on them, which I like. A lot of breweries these days are trying to do, crazy things with New England IPAs and pastry stouts and stuff like this. But to get a good old school Imperial Stout is something that is almost missing from the craft beer scene a little bit these days. So yeah, I have to say I'm quite glad that I picked up this beer, and nice to return to these guys after quite a long time. But yeah, let's break down this beer and go through the aroma a little bit more in depth then. So, backbone of this beer, you do get a little bit of a you can smell a little bit of the kind of roasty, toasty, black malty character in there. Yeah, definitely a nice little bit of a roasty, toasty, black malty character in there. Wee bit of a smooth brown bready character on top of that, absolutely. There are one or two little woody and nutty undertones to this, and quite often you'll get these things in Imperial Stout, so you can definitely notice it in this one. But yeah, bread crust, a little bit of a smooth brown bread in there, almost like a German rye bread actually. It has got a wee touch of sweetness to it, one or two little nutty and woody notes in there, and then on top of that you can actually smell it has got a little bit of an almost kind of cocoa nibby dryness to it, this one, which is quite interesting. But it's a mix of a well-fired, really toasty bread crust and also a bit of that kind of chocolate cocoa nibby sort of thing. When you're a bit further away from the aroma, when you waft it like this, as we were always taught to do in chemistry in the lab, so we didn't destroy our noses, it smells a little bit sweeter. It almost comes across a little bit like an oatmeal stout in some ways. So I wouldn't be surprised at that. Just look at the ingredients list. Does it say? There you go. Yeah, I was right. I didn't even notice that before. Yeah, havre malt. So yeah, it's got oats in it. That makes sense. So yeah, it does smell, rather than being straight up oats though, it does actually smell a little bit more like oatmeal, and oatmeal has a wee bit more of that kind of grainy, porridgey sort of thing to it, and you can definitely pick that up in this beer. So yeah, you do get that well-fired bread crusty note, that kind of more porridgey, oaty sort of thing, and yeah, I really do like how that goes together in this one. So yeah, lovely bit of that there. But yeah, there's definitely some chocolate in this one for me. So I'd say that there's a kind of maybe 50% cocoa chocolate there. It's not quite sweet enough to be milk chocolate, but it's not quite roasty and toasty enough to be, the dark, high cocoa chocolate in there. So maybe about 50% cocoa coming out of this one. So I really like how that goes together in this beer. There's maybe a little hint of a kind of roasty, toasty brown sugar in there. And of course, when it's 9.3%, you would expect a little bit of booziness to come out of the beer. So I am getting a wee bit of that, but definitely a wee bit of a sweet caramel there, a bit of a roasty, toasty caramel as well. But yeah, I really like how this one goes about its business in that regard, actually. So it gets a big thumbs up from me in that sense. So yeah, the malty side of this beer is actually quite nice, and the more that I smell of it, the more I get sort of that oatmeal kind of thing to it. So yeah, it is more like a kind of imperial oatmeal stout, this one, but it does have a wee bit of chocolatey sweetness to it and some nice brown sugar as well. So I'm curious to see how balanced this one is going to be in the actual flavour when we try it. So on the hoppy side of things then, and remember these beers of course are not the most hoppy, hop forward beer styles, I guess we should say. But yeah, there's definitely a wee bit of earthiness to this one, absolutely. I've got a feeling it might be an English hop that's in this, but I could be mistaken. It could be something American, like Williamette or something like that. But yeah, there is a wee touch of earthiness to this one. There's a little bit of floral character lingering there as well, but I do get quite a wee bit of grassiness out of it, and that tells you this beer is fairly fresh. So I'm guessing that probably they're putting like a 2-year. Probably they are putting like a 2-year date on this one. So I'm guessing that this was maybe produced in like September of 2021 actually, and that would explain why some of the hoppy characters are still there. Of course, with an Imperial Stout you can let these beers sit for a while, and the hoppy side of the beer will drop back a bit, and that's not really going to be detrimental to the beer itself. A lot of people say that Imperial Stouts actually get better with age, but I'm not 100% sure on that. I think barley wines do, but Imperial Stouts, I think, personally I don't think there's too much difference when it comes to aging Imperial Stouts and stuff like this. I think they will taste just as good in terms of quality. Some of the flavours I think might round off a little bit and stuff like that, but yeah, I think Imperial Stouts, you can drink them whenever, to be honest with you. But yeah, you definitely get a nice little bit of grassiness out of this one. The fruity side of the beer is quite interesting as well, so let's just look at that before we taste it. So, fruity side of things, for me, there is a nice little bit of a sharp raisin to this one. I do like that, yeah, a little bit of sharper raisin in there. Underneath that, there's a little bit of a kind of figgy, yeah, there is a little bit of sharp raisin, a little bit of a juicy kind of figgy character in there as well. So yeah, there's a wee bit, as I say, sharper raisin, sharper plum, but underneath that you get a little bit more of that kind of oily figgy character in there, and then you know, there's a wee bit of that kind of blackberry sort of note to this one. I don't get so much of the softer black currant, but definitely more of a sharper blackberry. This beer is quite interesting in that regard because the fruits are actually quite sharp and quite juicy in this one. So yeah, I think that could be something like, you know, it could be a little bit of Bramling's Cross that's in this from England, or it could be something from the States like, you know, Williamette, or however, I know Williamette was actually quite popular, and there was another hop that was popular over there in the States for the berry notes as well. Was it No, it wasn't Summit. I forget what the other one is, but there's one of the hops over in the States that gives you some really nice red fruity characters, and the name is just completely gone from my memory just now, so I need to look that up. But yeah, this is a very nice kind of old school smelling Imperial Stout, this one. So a bit of a change of pace from all the pastry stouts and stuff like that are floating about these days. So yeah, as I always say, take a little bit of time to enjoy the aroma of the beer before you get stuck into it, but I think it's about time that we taste this one. So yeah, this is the Imperial Stout, simple name, coming in at 9.3% ABV, from Ebeltoft GårdBryggeri in Midtjylland over in Denmark. So let's get stuck into this one. Slanja, skål, cheers. Nice to return to these guys after such a long time. Let's go for it. Yeah. That's pretty nice, actually. Yeah. It is really well balanced. Like, it's got on top, it's an oatmeal stout, but underneath it does have a little bit more of that kind of roasty, toasty Russian Imperial Stout type quality. I'd be curious to know what exact sub-style, if you like, of Imperial Stout that they were going for with this. But whatever it is, this is really pretty solid. And as I've said, you know, I've had a Helles from these guys recently. I've had a Doppelbock. I don't know if I had a Dunkel from them, actually. But yeah, these guys, one thing I like about Ebeltoft GårdBryggeri is that they do these kind of older styles, if you like. They go back to the root of the style, they do them, and they just try to do them well, and they always tend to work out really nicely. And this is another example. I've only had one sip of it, but I will tell you straight away, this is a very good quality Imperial Stout. So yeah, if you get the chance to try this, this is a really good beer if you want, you know, a really old school Imperial Stout. But it is quite like an oatmeal stout, I would say. Definitely this is quite like a kind of oatmeal Imperial Stout, this one, and I've not had one of these in quite a wee while, actually. So on the where do we start with this one then? We'll break down the flavour as we always do. So yeah, let's take the kind of malty backbone of this beer then. So middle third of your palate, back third of your palate, you can feel there's a nice roasty toasty, backbone there. So you do have a wee bit of that black malt just kind of sitting there. But what I would say is that it is a little bit more like a kind of well-fired bread crust, actually. I wouldn't be surprised if it's carafa, actually, that they've used as the base of this one, but it is very nice. So if we focus on that middle third of the palate, yeah, the backbone of this beer is that roasty, toasty, well-fired, bread crusty character. That just sits there. On top of that, you get this kind of brown bready sort of character coming out of it, and it feels a little bit thick and almost kind of porridge-like. So that's the oatmeal side of this beer. It's definitely, I'm pretty sure rather than straight up oats, it's actual oatmeal that's in this one. And it does, you know, obviously it does taste a little bit different, because if it's straight up oats, the beer will feel very smooth and kind of clean, whereas this one does have a wee bit more of that kind of porridgey, almost like sludgy type character to it. But you know, the oatmeal stouts are very, very nice in that regard. They just feel really really kind of smooth and thick actually. So you've got that there, bread, toasty, well-fired bread crust, and a bit of that kind of oatmeal kind of thing sitting on top of it. But if you move toward the front half of that middle third of your palate, you definitely get a little bit of a woody and slightly nutty character out of this one. So yeah, that goes together very, very well. So on the on top of that though, on top of the kind of oatmeal-y sort of character, you do get that kind of dry almost, it's not quite cocoa nib, but it's not a million miles away from it. You get that nice kind of chocolatey layer there. So at the back of that middle third of your palate, you can feel there is a nice kind of dry sort of, I would say maybe about, it's a bit, the chocolate is a bit kind of stronger, if you like, than it was in the aroma. So toward the back of that middle third of your palate, you do get a nice sort of 60% cocoa chocolate. You can feel that, and it's a bit drier. But as you come further forward, it sort of sweetens up a little bit. It sweetens up a little bit, and yeah, it sweetens up a little bit. And as you move further forward, you start to get, as you reach the very kind of front of that middle third of your palate, you get a little bit more of a kind of 30% cocoa chocolate. So yeah, the chocolate does sweeten up, but this is a general thing, you know, the bitter flavours come out more towards the back of your palate, the sweeter flavours come out further forward. But sitting on top of that chocolatey layer there, you've got a little circle, and that's where the kind of brown sugary notes start to come out of the beer. So yeah, sitting on top of that kind of chocolatey, sitting on top of that kind of chocolatey side of the beer, you do have a wee bit more of a, you've got a little bit more of a, it has a little bit of an almost kind of slightly toasty brown sugary layer. So yeah, you can feel there's a wee bit of a toasty caramel there, but as you go right into the dead centre of your palate, there's a more concentrated, oily, caramelly note coming out of this one. So yeah, I do like how this, I do like how that side of this beer goes together. So yeah, oily caramel right in the dead centre of the palate, then a bit more of a kind of toasty brown sugary note as you move further out from that. So what I would say about this beer is it doesn't really, this is one of these ones where it doesn't really do anything surprising with the style. And you know, after 3,200 beer reviews, you know, it's difficult to find something that surprises you, to be honest with you. But this one really goes about its business really nicely, and you can't ask for anything more than that. This is a proper kind of old school Imperial oatmeal stout, and I really like it. I've not had a stout quite like this one for a good wee while. So this is a nice change of pace from all those big, you know, sweet pastry stouts and things that we've been looking at in recent times. So this gets a big thumbs up from me. Malty side of this beer is really nice. But that's the middle third of your palate covered. Let's look at the back third of your palate then and bring the yeasty side of the beer into it. So, border region between middle third and back third of your palate, you get a little bit of a bready build up once again, a wee bit of a bread crust. Pardon me, bit of a bread crusty note there. Back third of your palate, again, you get a wee bit of that toasty bread crust underneath. You can feel that the oatmeal bready layer of the beer is a little bit thicker. So yeah, you can feel that nice kind of thick oatmeal-y type quality is sitting in there, which is good. And then on top of that, of course, you can feel a wee bit of that chocolatey character just kind of creeping over and sitting on top of the oatmeal layer. But the oatmeal layer is a lot thicker in the back third of the palate than it is in the middle third of the palate. But sitting on top of all of that, that's where you get the yeasty side of the beer. So let's just focus on that. So, sitting on top of that, sitting on top of the yeasty, or sitting on top of that kind of oatmeal-y side of the beer, you have a, how do you say it? You have a little bit, you can feel the yeastiness in there, and it just feels like a really dense, thick, bready sort of thing. The further you go into the aftertaste with it, it gets a bit drier, so it's like a really dusty, like brown bread crust that you get out of it. So that sits on top of the oatmeal-y side of the beer. But yeah, when you sit at the back when you're on the back third of your palate, you can feel the flavour is a little bit taller. So yeah, you've got that nice little bit of taller flavour there. Then as you come further forward, the flavour just condenses down as you go into the middle third of the palate, and then as you move further forward, it just, you know, those flavours feel a little, you know, a lot more nice and dense actually. So I really do like how that goes together in this one. So yeah, the malty and yeasty side of this beer is very, very nice actually. So yeah, big thumbs up to Ebeltoft GårdBryggeri once again for this. This is really solid, but you know, based on my past experiences with this brewery, I wouldn't expect anything else. Let's look at the hoppy side of the beer then. So back corners of the palate, definitely a wee bit of earthiness there, and the earthiness does spread forward a little bit, but then as you move into the kind of front half of the sides of your tongue, it starts to get a little bit floral. You can feel there's a little bit of floral aromaticity there on the front corners of the palate, but round the front curve of the tongue, it's a little bit lighter and more grassy, I would say. So yeah, definitely a little bit of a lighter kind of grassy sort of thing coming out of it. So yeah, I like how that goes together too. So yeah, the hoppy side of this beer, as I say, it does come across as quite fresh, and that side of the beer will obviously drop out a little bit more the more that you drink of this one. So yeah, I do like how that goes together in this beer for sure. The hoppy side of the beer suits it quite nicely. But let's focus on the front third of your palate and the fruity side of the beer. So border region between front third and middle third of your palate, again you get a little bit of a kind of bready build up there and a wee bit of that bread crust, and then the base of that front third of your palate is a little bit more it is a little bit more of a kind of smooth brown bready sort of thing in there, but it does feel a little bit sweeter actually. You get a little bit of a sweeter brown bready character there, but sitting on top of that you get that nice oily bubble where those juicy fruity esters just roll their way out of the beer. So yeah, it's quite nice in that regard. And the fruity side of the beer is a little bit more oily and not quite as sharp as the aroma would have had me believe, but still goes together nicely. You do get a little hint of a kind of cakey vibe toward the back of that front third of your palate too in this one. So yeah, so the fruity side of the beer then, sitting on top at the back of the front third of your palate, there's a wee bit of that raisiny sharpness. Underneath you do get a little bit of a kind of plummy character, but then the base of that front third of your palate is a little bit more of a kind of, it is a bit more of a kind of nice juicy oily figgy sort of thing. So yeah, a bit of raisin, bit of plum, and then the kind of juicy figgy note underneath there. But as you move further forward on that front third of your palate, you can feel it starts to move toward being a little bit more of an oily blackberry. As you go into the front half of that middle third of your palate, it does really become a little bit more of a kind of oily and blackberry type thing that comes out of this one. So yeah, I really like how that side of the beer goes together in that sense. So yeah, fruity side of this beer gets a big thumbs up from me. So yeah, I like this one. I really do like how this beer goes together. But yeah, I don't think there's anything else we really need to say about the flavour of this one. The further you go into the aftertaste with it, you can feel some of the nice smooth oaty characters coming out of the beer a wee bit more. And yeah, I think it works very, very well. So yeah, has my approval for sure. Let's round off the review with a look at the mouthfeel then. Mouthfeel wise, I'd say this is kind of at the bottom end of full bodied. Yeah, bottom end of full bodied. Carbonation's very smooth. It's got a lovely slickness to it, this beer actually, which is nice. In terms of IBUs, I don't think this one's going to blow the head off you in terms of IBUs. It's hard to place actually, because a lot of the stuff you get out of this beer is more grainy rather than being bitter. So I mean, maybe this one just sits around the kind of 40-50 IBU mark. It's actually more kind of smooth and sweet rather than anything else. So yeah, 40 or 50 IBUs I think it seems about right for this one. But yeah, lovely big, lovely big thickness. Yeah, lovely big thickness in the malt base here from the kind of oatmeal-y side of the beer. Good little bit of kind of chocolatey dryness and a wee bit of kind of caramelly sweetness to it. It's a lovely, lovely tasting beer, this one. I like how it goes together. But yeah, malty side of the beer, It's very, very nicely done. Fruity side of the beer has a nice wee bit of an oiliness to it as well. Pardon me, and just generally speaking, this is a really nice Imperial Stout. Definitely a change of pace compared to what we've had from some of the other beers in recent times, so certainly has my approval. But I think we can leave it at that for this one. Ebeltoft GårdBryggeri once again delivering a solid take on one of the kind of more old school styles. So yeah, I just need to keep an eye on what these guys are releasing and look out for them when I make it over to Copenhagen next time. But yeah, we can leave it there. So once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Ebeltoft GårdBryggeri. This one was the Imperial Stout, 9.3% ABV, a lovely old school Imperial Oatmeal Stout, I guess we'd have to call it. And I definitely wouldn't hesitate to drink this one again. So yeah, have a go at this one for something a little bit more old school. And you know, have a go at this brewery's beers. We do some really nice takes on more traditional styles, I guess we could say. But if you want something more modern, then go for the Raw Power, a lovely New England IPA. But until the next time, Slanger just now. Check out my social media, check out Ebeltoft GårdBryggeri's social media, and do keep your Danish brewery recommendations for me coming in the comment section below. Slanger, skål, cheers, and see you guys in the next review.